Good morning, everybody. My name is Inga Cotton. I'm the founder and executive director of San Antonio Charter Moms. And this morning, it's just me on Charter Moms Chats. And the featured activity on Charter, A Summer of Learning today is posted by me. And I'm going to add the link to the description of the video. So in honor of it's being almost Independence Day, and there's actually early voting happening right now in Texas related to a runoff primary election that's in a couple weeks, but early voting is happening now. And so I wanted to, so the activity is talking to your kids about civics and how important it is to exercise your right to vote. And, just encouraging you to talk to your kids about how our government works and why it's important that we speak up, because that's part of our mission for San Antonio Charter Moms. And we have it, it's on the website. If you go to like our story and read more about that, it talks about our mission, vision, and values. And one of our objectives is advocating for higher quality education in San Antonio. And an important way to do that is encouraging parents to get involved and exercise their right to vote and inform themselves about the issues and the candidates affecting education. Now, we are a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and that means we do not endorse candidates. And we have rules in the San Antonio Charter Moms discussion group about, like, we don't want members to be going, over above and beyond to endorse a particular candidate. It gets controversial, and it's bad for the sort of the culture of the group. But we do want people to be aware that there's an election going on, and whenever there is an election going on, right? So the election that's happening right now, it's a runoff primary, and depending on where you live in the San Antonio area, you can, I'll suggest the resources so you can research and, look at what your sample ballot will look like, and be ready when you either go to the polls or, send in your mail-in ballot. But there are races that impact education. So there's a State Board of Education race that's in a runoff, and there's a county commissioner race, and also some runoffs in the state legislature, in the state house and the state senate. So yeah, like I said, we don't endorse candidates. We do encourage people to be aware that there's an election, and be aware of how those candidates, what their views are on education issues. So like we in the group, we share a lot of news links, especially like our group moderator, Becca Murillo. She does a great job of sharing. Like this week, we've talked about some really hot topics. So the State Board of Education has been evaluating sex ed rules for the first time in many years. And so the question is, do we teach sex ed through abstinence education or abstinence plus? It's a really controversial issue. And I'm really proud of not only Becca, but also the members of our group, because we've had, it's a really intense topic. It's very personal for a lot of families. And I feel like the group has been able to have a constructive dialogue, right? No name calling, nobody getting out of hand, but people have been able to express their different viewpoints, kind of pro and con, about what they think the State Board of Education should do. And, if it weren't for our group, some folks might not even know that was an issue coming up for the State Board of Education. And now, this is your chance. You can communicate with your, members who represent you on the State Board of Education. Bodies like that, they take testimony from the public, right? You can, apply to speak. Now things are a little different now because of COVID, but there's still ways to to make your voice heard. We had a discussion in the group about the United States Supreme Court, the Espinoza decision, which ruled that states could create scholarship programs that would provide tuition to both non-sectarians or independent private schools and to sectarian or religious private schools, right? So the idea is, if the state offers a private school scholarship program, then the parents could choose whether they use it at a secular school or at a private religious school, like a Catholic school. And that strikes down what are called the Blaine Amendments, which a lot of states enacted as kind of an anti-Catholic measure around the turn of the 19th century. And so that's a big change. Now, there's our strong opinions in the group about whether or not it's a good idea for public money to be used at private religious schools for education. So now the perspective going back to the mission, right? San Antonio Charter Moms, it's it's basically that we trust parents. They know their kids the best. They need the resources to put their kids in the schools where they'll get the best education. So, and if that means if the private school is the best setting for you, then we think you should have the flexibility to do that. So from the perspective of providing parents with more choice, the Espinoza decision paves the way for that. Now, it still depends on each state to create the scholarship program or the voucher program or the tax credit program or education savings accounts. And some states have those programs. Some states may be able to write them a little differently so they don't have to have like workarounds, to go around the Blaine amendments. Texas has no private school choice program. And actually we had a discussion in the group about folks moving from other states, right? So like in California, there are charter schools that are basically, I don't know exactly how it works, but they're called sort of homeschool charter schools where like, like the students are kind of doing distance learning, but they're enrolled through a charter school, which provides like the curriculum. And I don't know, anyway, it's a thing in California. On the Parent Exchange webcast on the parent support, I'm going to get the name wrong. There's a really great Facebook group that provides, from experienced virtual learning parents, offering support for parents who, like us, are experiencing remote education. They did a video about a school in California that works like that. They interviewed the superintendent, and anyway, so school choice works differently in different states, and sometimes folks will come to Texas and wonder like why Texas doesn't offer some programs that are available in other states. And that's a good question, and that's a question that you can ask your state representative or state senator, because they are the ones who could create a program like that, but have not. So one of the things we encourage is knowing who represents you. And there are resources to find that out online. And that's part of like knowing who's on your ballot, knowing, which districts you live in, knowing how to reach them, whether, by email, by phone. There's going to be, there's a big election in November to elect the next Texas legislature. And then the next legislative session will be in 2021. It'll run from January through May. Now, I saw a picture, I think Representative Manjarres posted a picture of, they put plexiglass dividers between the desks at the legislature. So, but they're getting ready for, they will have a legislative session in spite of COVID. Life keeps moving. There's still important decisions to be made. One thing that's happening now, remember we had a Charter Moms chat talking about the U.S. Census. We had Ronnie Nunez was our guest, and so one thing that is an impact because of the census, that means that there will be redistricting next year based on the data collected in the census. So it's possible that you might be in one district this year and in a different district next year if the boundaries get redrawn. So that's just something to be aware of. Sometimes you get, every 10 years or so, there's a chance you'll get moved. So I'm really proud of we've talked about some really controversial issues in the Charter Moms group, and I feel like everybody has stepped up and they've shared their opinions, but they've also been good listeners and maybe encountered points of view that they weren't familiar with before. That's the kind of culture that we want to create. It's like don't be so turned off by what's happening in politics that you just ignore it completely. It's these things do matter, especially local elections matter for education, and it's really important to be aware. So be aware that there is an election going on, and just check the link in the description, and it'll take you to some resources. So, but like I said, we share nonpartisan resources. So like the Bexar County Elections Department is really helpful because you can find sample ballots based on your address. You know which races you need to research, which ones you'll have a chance to vote on. SA 2020 is a nonprofit that promotes, among other things, civic engagement, and so they have a website with resources. If you're trying to get to know what the candidates stand for, you want to go beyond just what they say on their websites. The League of Women Voters has a site called Vote 411, and they do questionnaires to the candidates. And so as long as the candidates participate, it gives you a perspective on what their views are and what they're likely to do if they're elected. The San Antonio Express News editorial board, so not the news side, but the editorial side, the opinion page, they interview candidates and make endorsements. So it's not determinative, but they have the clout. They get to meet with candidates face to face, got to look them in the eye. that's more access than regular folks usually get. So I like to know. I don't always agree with them, but I like to know what they say. So this year things are a little different. Now in Texas, the rules are pretty strict about whether you qualify for a mail-in ballot. Technically, you're only supposed to vote by mail if you are over 65 or you have a disability that's supposed to prevent you from going to the polls. Now, the courts have ruled that fear of COVID is not a disability. Anyway, I'll include the link. Today, July 2nd, is the last day to request a mail-in ballot. I will include the link. I leave it up to your discretion whether you feel like you qualify for a mail-in ballot or if you just don't want to have to, sanitize the heck out of yourself. They've got, I don't know, they're using there's a stylus to, I don't know. They give you gloves. I don't know. These are strange times. So I encourage you to exercise your right to vote, and I encourage you to stay safe. So I will provide you with the information, and you use your best judgment. So those are that's practical information about how to vote in the runoff primary election that's in the early voting stage right now. So I encourage you to talk with your kids about this stuff, right? Talk about why it's important to vote. Before COVID, I would, whenever possible, take my kids with me when I went to vote, and they get a kick out of it. And the election workers, the volunteers, they'll give them usually a little sticker, right? Maybe the adults can get the I voted sticker, and then the kids can get the future voter sticker. I always got a kick out of that. And and talking about what the different political parties mean, talking about how different decisions are made at different levels of government, right? This week there's a lot of Supreme Court decisions coming down because it's the end of the term. And so you can talk about how the judicial branch acts, they do judicial review, right? So it's checks and balances on the legislature and the executive. And when it comes to spending money, right? Setting budgets for education, that's what the legislature does. So, if your kids are well, my teacher works really hard, she needs a raise. Well, that's a matter that you can communicate to your state representative or state senator. They're the ones who are going to be looking at school finance issues in the coming legislature. So, if you want to make sure that, or if your kids feel like their charter school is not fancy enough, they need a better gym, or they need a playground or a library. Well, that's a budget issue. That's facilities funding for charter schools, and that's also something you can communicate to your state legislature. So just talking to your kids about that. Now, so like I said, Educating Charter Moms is nonpartisan. It's a 501c3 organization. So we try to present a range of viewpoints. But the main focus is promoting high quality in education. Neither political party has a monopoly on good or bad ideas on education. And what I encourage everyone to do is dig deeper than just the label, because even within the Democratic Party, there are people who support charter schools and there's people who oppose charter schools, right? And within the Republican Party, there's people who have different ideas about curriculum, and or people who really strongly support private school choice, or people who support charter schools. There's people who in the Republican Party who oppose charter schools and oppose school choice. So really, the party label really doesn't tell you much about what's going on. So, and in the education world, you'll see some kind of strange allies, right? People who are considered maybe progressive Democrats, partnering up with right-wing Republicans to create, education reform programs that work in a particular context. So my advice is to do your research, be open-minded, and be flexible. So some of my role models are the guys on the 8 Black Hands podcast, which I highly recommend. They just have a great show, and they're just very honest. And one of their messages is, I can't remember which one of them says this, but they say, there are no permanent friends, only permanent interests, right? So if you keep your eye on the ball and the goal is high quality education, then you should work with whoever will get you towards that goal, and don't get hung up on a particular party label, or a particular interest group. Just keep your eye on the ball. What is actually going to help kids get educated, right? And for the 8 Black Hands, a lot of that is through an equity lens, right? How do Black and brown children get the help that they need when historically they've been denied opportunity? So that's my advice. Look beyond the party labels. Do your research. No permanent friends, only permanent interests. Right. And that's why I keep coming back to the San Antonio Charter Mom's mission. Right. We're improving quality of education, and we trust parents to know their kids the best. And our role is to provide you with information. So that's why in the group, and I salute Becca Maria, our group moderator. She's been working really hard lately, presenting these important topics. But encouraging people to really have a dialogue and really open their ears and listen to each other. And I think I'm really proud. I feel like over the last few weeks, our group has introduced people to ideas that maybe they hadn't encountered before, or let them know that things are happening now that they might not have seen that news somewhere else. So that's the activity for today for the Charter of Summer of Learning. We have a big, let's see. Let me fly up the URL here. This is the overall page. And so if you click around on the dates, we have a bunch of activities for June. We're getting the ones for July loaded, and there's inspiration, different projects each day. But today the project is talk to your kids about civics and explain to them, why you're voting. And we've got resources to help you, guide you towards making it a decision you feel comfortable with. The important thing is, please participate, exercise your right as to vote. And I think that's the best way we can honor, the 4th of July and the promise that everyone should have a role in guiding our government, in our democracy. So, all right, have a good day, y'all. Take care.